Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binary, distinguished guests, welcome to Ridiculous, the Life of a Clown.
I am a theater, circus, and therapeutic clown, and I also train clown in all three genres.
And your name is Helen Donnelly?
It is.
Wonderful. So Helen, in the very beginning, whenever it first dawned on you to follow this path, what led you to clown in the first place?
Well, I trained as an actor, and when I got out there, I quickly grew weary of the patterns that were emerging. You know, you'd audition many times, finally land a part in a show or film, the project ends, and then you go back out there. And for me, it just kind of lacked a sense of community and continuity, like artistic continuity. So, I found that there was no one method or mode of training to concentrate on. And so I just put my focus toward physical theater, which eventually and, quite naturally led me to the art of clown. That was a total surprise, as I was aiming for something a little bit more along the lines of Grotowski originally, that kind of thing. So clown was a bit of a surprise.
Where were you? Physically, where were you located?
Toronto.
And so you've been in Toronto for the majority of your career, except assuming when you were touring and so on. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So what brought you to acting in the first place?
Well, I come from a long line of teachers, and I was very conservative minded when I was really young. So I just assumed that I would sort of follow that line of career. And so I was seeking two teachable subjects, and because I was in school plays and I was just sort of really interested in musicals, I just thought, well, my two teachables will be English and drama. So that's why I went to U of T as opposed to some of the more practical theater schools in Toronto. But the drama program actually turned out to be a really good choice because it was just as practical as it was academic. And I got a really good base in terms of what it led me to. So yeah.
So where did you go to make the transition from actor to clown? Where was that training located?
Well, surprisingly, it was in my own town, Toronto. I was prepared to go to England or Russia to get some training in France. And while I was sort of moving in that direction, somebody had tipped me off about a physical theater school, clown in particular, in Toronto, which had been sort of under the radar. And we hadn't learned about this particular school of clown in theater school. So when I found out about it and I investigated further, I realized this is kind of a little bit different, and I'm going to give it a shot. And like 25 years later.
So who was that? What school was it? Is it still in existence there?
It is in a certain sense. So it was the school of Richard Pachinko, who was a Canadian who trained at Lecoq originally and then came back and founded his own theatrical clown school in Toronto. Originally, I think it started in Ottawa and Montreal, and then it settled in Toronto in the late 70s to late 80s. And he was a really interesting fellow who drew upon a lot of Indigenous cultural traditions, including it's fondly called clown through mask, or baby clown, as it's affectionately called. Yeah, baby clown or clown through mask. That's the level 1. And then the level 2 would be Joey and Auguste. So it's the learning the white and the red, and learning both aspects of yourself in white, as a white clown and as a red clown. So that training, it's 100 hours for each level. So I did both levels at that particular school, and then I switched schools, and there were other students of Pachinko who were training elsewhere in Toronto, so I started training under them as well. And that was the very famous Mump and Smoot duo. Smoot, which is Mike Kennard, he was my trainer and director for the next 10 years, which brings us up to, I guess, the late 90s.
So you currently do therapeutic clowning as well as theatrical clowning. But let's talk about
and circus clowning as well.
Circus.
Yeah.
See,
Mm-hmm.
to me, theatrical clowning and circus, it's such a weird distinction between the two because there is so much overlap, so much more connection in that Venn diagram between circus and theatrical clowning than there is between any other kind of clowning and what people perceive as a clown. You know what I mean? What you see when I'm sending people out on corporate events or to parties or when you're running into people who are working street fairs and so on, the disconnect between the kind of clown they do, which is clown absolutely, and the kind of clown that falls into the spectrum of theater to circus is so far removed. It's hard for me to make more of a distinction between theater and circus. Which did you do first? I'm assuming it was theater before it was circus.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
So, how did that come about? Did you go into a solo show straight out of clown school? Did you get hired on somewhere?
Yeah, it was creating it was very gradual, right? So it's, part of the training is, in level 2, you do create small, like 5 to 10 minute pieces. And then often those pieces grew into, 20-minute pieces. And then you have a fringe show that's an hour long. And so I did a lot of that kind of stuff, building fringe shows and, festival shows. And so that's sort of the organic way to go. Yeah, I think that's probably the most popular way that kind of grows out of the training.
And that's not uncommon. So at what point did you become a clown for a living? A clown who made their existence on clown without a secondary, fallback source of income, where clown is just what you do, either teaching or performing. Clown is the sole focus of what you do to exist in the world.
Yeah, happily about 15 years ago, that's when I hung up my waitress apron for the last time, which was such a celebration, I tell you. And yeah, I'm not an actor anymore. I'm no longer going. I don't have an agent. I don't go out for auditions. So that world I left behind even longer ago, about 20 years ago. So, but yeah, it's actually quite a rare. I'm understanding now just how rare it is to be a female professional clown and have your sole income only come from clown. That's pretty rare. It's a little bit more common with men, but so I'm kind of proud of that.
How did this correspond to Cirque du Soleil in terms of the timeline of your career?
Yeah, so in '99 I was, creating like short little pieces, and I started submitting to them I guess in 98. So 99 I was submitting as well, and then in 2000 I think that's right. In about 2000 there was a small wonderful circus show called The World of Tokar, and that was at sort of a festival site in Toronto by the water, and Cirque du Soleil was setting up their Dralion tent on that same site. So we had a scout that came over and saw the work I was doing there, and said, you really need to pitch for Cirque. And I said, oh well, I actually did, like last year, and nothing really came of it. And he said, oh well, I'll see that gets remedied. and so yeah, so within a couple of months, I was granted, their next round of auditions. So I auditioned for them, got into the talent bank, waited about a year, and I got my first contract in 2001.
And what show was that with?
That was with Dralion, actually. So that was kind of a neat happenstance. Yeah. I joined the North American tour 2001 to the end of 2002. So I was on the road for almost 2 years.
So how was it? Tell me a little bit about what that was like. I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to hear.
Well, it was amazing because my introduction to Cirque was really gentle. It was working the VIP tent, which was a separate tent from the big top. So my job with a clown partner who I'd never met before from Halifax, he and I were working in partnership, working the crowds, these very rich Americans who would come in for their champagne and caviar pre-show. So we do an hour show, and then we do the half-hour intermission show, and that was really a very creative time, and a time of a lot of learning, because it was my first time doing what we call animation or roving. So really cutting my teeth with this amazing director who was my scout, Roch Dutra, and he's been with Cirque since its beginning. So, and he's just an incredible clown and an amazing mentor. So it was a really cozy time. I have to say, I learned so much and I grew so much, and it was quick, right? The learning was really, really quick. And I still use the three personas that I created at that time. I still use them to this day for my corporate work.
That's wonderful. So as to what you did in the VIP tent, breaking that down. I mean, you said it was walk around. It was ambient. Are you doing staged pieces as well? I mean, obviously you're going to have bits that you do with your partner as walk around, but are you doing staged pieces as well as walk around, or is it just walk around the whole time?
It was pretty much walk around the whole time. We did create little latsies that we would do, like little moments where, my persona would fall in love with somebody, and my clown partner would be, the marriage, what do you call it? The officiant, or, what else would happen? My other persona, Miss Posey, who's this kind of, faded opera star who is the hostess of the whole tent, or thinks she is. And, she drinks, and she drinks so much that finally she just kind of collapses, and sort of my clown partner's job is to get a lot of help to, sober me up. And we'd have little latsies like that, and they were a lot of fun.
So you're with Cirque for 2 years, is that right?
Yeah, it was almost 2 years. And then after I came back, there were a lot of, I did about 3 auditions for other shows and other concepts. So I was flying to New York for auditions, or Montreal for auditions. And that was all during the time that they hired me for special events worldwide. So I would, and that was, it was good. It was as you can imagine, because you only have one night, right? So you work maybe 2 or 3 rehearsal nights for this one special event. And, maybe it's, a bunch of lawyers celebrating the 30th anniversary of their firm, and, you're flown to Brazil. Like I was flown to Brazil. I was flown to England twice. I was flown to Boston 4 times, and, a couple of them would be in Toronto. So, that was great. And on the other hand, you had one night to get it really right. And I was doing a lot of interactive clowning. I was sort of like holding the ball up in the air, as it were, sort of being the MC, or the interest in between the acts, and sort of just the glue that kept the show together. And it was just a huge, and it was only me. I didn't have a clown partner to work with. And you're working with all the people, like a whole bunch of people that you've never worked with before. So it's almost like every single event would be like a whole new cast. So,
but you're coming into these events with pieces already in mind that you're going to be doing at most of them. Is that right?
yes and no. I mean, sometimes the concept would be really radically different. So, your ideas would just get tossed out the window. And sometimes they wouldn't have a clear idea about what it would look like in terms of, a theme or, sort of, so I'd just be pitching all the time. And it's really up to you to keep that rhythm going. Whereas, these specialty acts are doing their 2 or 3 minutes and they're done, right?
So how do you make comedy happen when what you know is going to work is getting thrown out because it doesn't fit the program, and you're going to have to pull and pitch new things? I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of time where the theme, or at least some of the time, where the theme is going to be more important than it being funny.
Yeah, sometimes it felt that way, and I wouldn't give up. I was pretty good at pitching, and I had some really thoughtful people that were working with me, and but yeah, it did take its toll. Like after 3 years of it, I was just like, you know what, this kind of isn't my jam anymore. It's lovely, but it's not me anymore. And so I really was craving to go back to the drawing board and create shows for myself. And so that was my focus for the next whatever years, for the next 10 years. I was just sort of, I need to ground myself. I really want to be back in my hometown and back, just sort of growing things organically from scratch again. So that's what I did, and that was a really good decision.
So what's your process for that? How do you go about creating new work?
Well, I mean, I have different methods, different writing methods that I use. So one which has been really great, which is something I teach my students. It's called clustering, and Richard Pachinko taught his students this funky little thing. Maybe you do it. I don't know. I think it grew out of San Francisco or somewhere in California in the 60s. But it's really stream of consciousness, and it's just sort of like your pencil doesn't leave the page, and you just continue to write anything down. So it's just flowing out of you, and it's in clusters. And it's a visual map, I guess, of your subconscious, and I get a lot of images from that, especially when I know I'm quite lost and I don't know where to start. So I usually start with that just to kind of see what my brain is up to and what my imagination wants to say. And then sometimes it's really just almost like it's going to sound so flaky, but sort of like just visualizing myself on stage, just as simple as that. And now what happens, and where am I? And I'll know the persona that I'm going to be working with. And so it's, if it's Foo, it's like, okay, so what's Foo up to? And then sometimes it's been inspired by real life events, right? As a lot of writers can attest. So Soleil was a musical that I wrote in 2011, and it was a story about persona who's this sort of traveler who befriends a pig, which is my partner on stage. It's a puppet. It's a puppet pig, and this pig is named Saucisse, and the two of them have this odd friendship, and the pig is just completely focused on this amazing place that he needs to get to, and it turns out to be a slaughterhouse. So that's his destiny. And that was inspired by a real life event. So it was my grieving the loss of my first therapeutic clown partner, who died at the age of 33 of a brain tumor. And I needed to put my grief somewhere in the creative realm. And I really wanted to do something that spoke to so many different feelings that I was going through. I was feeling so much, and I wanted to illustrate all of these different feelings that you go through. It's not just sadness. There was anger, and there was confusion, and there was anger again. And there was an awful lot of love, and there was just a lot of unanswered questions, and it was a really tender time. So yeah, I think it, like any writer, I think it can come from, and it should be free to come from, all kinds of places.
So when you're putting together new work, before you've gotten it in front of an audience, before you've been able to, after you've done your clustering and after you've turned into, at least in your mind, a physical thing, how do you know it's going to be funny? What's the framework that you use to know you're putting together good work before you actually get it in front of someone?
Yeah. It goes in stages, right? So the first one is, does it make me laugh? It has to make me laugh. And I don't know. I mean, I'm really hard on myself, as anybody would attest. So if I'm laughing, I figure that that's a good sign because I don't suffer fools gladly, ironically. And then I have an amazing director, who happens to be my life partner, Neil Muscott. And, he also is really discerning. So if I'll show him my draft, and just by reading it, if he starts to chuckle, I know I'm on the right path again. And then usually there's, during process, I will, oh yeah, did I kick it? Did I, are we?
But go ahead.
Okay. Not sure where we dropped out, but anyway, during the rehearsal process, inevitably we'll have a couple of people in just to test the waters a little bit. And, I mean, and then there's your stage manager. I mean, if you can make your stage manager laugh, that's amazing. So, 'cause they've seen it all, right? They're amazing. And if they're continually laughing, then you kind of know that there's something there. But yeah, I would say that that's the process there.
So, jumping back to your career for a second, you did theatrical clown on your own, and through these groups that you mentioned earlier in Toronto, and then you led into working with Cirque for a couple of years. What led you to therapeutic clowning?
Yeah, a colleague of mine who was a therapeutic clown kept inviting me to audition for positions that would open up from time to time. And the first two times that auditions were opening up, I just refused to go to them. I didn't think that this was ever something I could ever do. I just couldn't imagine the toll on your system, on your emotional life. And I didn't understand it. Like what could possibly be light and funny about suffering, about a space that's filled with suffering. So I did refuse for the first two rounds. And then the next time a position was opened up, I found myself saying yes. And during the audition, which was in the atrium of the hospital, I just realized, wow, this is also what I'm built to do. It was just like a light bulb turning on. It was just amazing. It was a really strong feeling, and I was surprised by that. And I still didn't think that I'd be any good at it, but But yeah, I'm happy to say that I was wrong about so many things there.
So how does it what is its place in your life and career right now? What is it you're doing with therapeutic clowning in Toronto at the moment?
So for the last 10 years, I've been at the same hospital. I was at a different hospital for the first 2 years. And the last just over 10 years, I've been at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital, which is in Toronto. It's Canada's largest rehab hospital for children recovering from injury and various diseases and disorders. And they're there to increase their strength, to walk again, to talk again, all that good stuff. And I'm there 3 days a week with my partners, and that's just been such a rich balance with my circus and theater life. And and realizing that you're using so many of this, as you know, so many of the same muscles as a clown artist, and offering it in this what can be quite.
Hello, Helen. Did we lose you? Helen. Oh, Helen.
Hospital team.
Helen, we lost you. We lost you for a minute there.
Oh, shoot.
You want to back up like 2 sentences?
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, so I'm there 3 days a week, and then I'm also the lead therapeutic clown trainer. So I organize the auditions should one come up for new therapeutic clown hopefuls, and that's been just such a joy to be able to create a really fun and engaging and informative 3-day long audition process. And the art of picking just the right person is, just such a wonderful thing. And
what is it you're looking for when you're picking that person? What is your criteria? How do you know you've got the right person for that position?
So many. I mean, their clown skills have to be very, very strong, obviously. So we're looking for someone who's really physically and emotionally embedded in their clown, huge capacity for imagination, a sense of curiosity, attention to detail, humility, like that's huge. We don't want a lot of egos there. Willingness to learn, great with giving and receiving feedback, working in a team. We're looking at, in terms of special skills, a bonus would be like, a second language, because, as you know, Toronto's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. And so it's no surprise that our, our clients are equally represented, all cultures all over the world. It's amazing. So that's a huge bonus if someone can speak a different language other than English. And then we're looking for people who are really have a capacity for movement. Dance is really useful, rhythm, like percussion and musicality. We're not looking for professional musicians. It's a bonus if that happens, and it just so happens that all three of us are quite musical. But anybody can shake a shaker and stuff like that, as long as you keep a beat, because so much of what we do is, as I'm sure it's improvised, it's created on the spot, on the spur of the moment, by picking up on the need in the room at the time. So whether that be something, nonverbal, because a lot of our clients are nonverbal or pre-verbal. So there's a lot of techniques. And so we're looking for people who pick up on the need right away. We do a lot of role play in our auditions, and that really gives us a good sense of where they're at and how attentive they are, and are they fun to be with? Are they or are they going to be a pain in the butt? Like, are they light and fun people? Not to say that life isn't always light, of course not, but do they bounce back? And
Maybe that was my problem. I auditioned for a medical clown program, and I did not
mhm.
make the cut. But I'm not the lightest person, so
Mm,
it may have had something to do with it. Um,
yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your influences. Uh, Sorry to change the subject so abruptly, but what what was it that influenced the clown and performer that you became, especially in terms of media like theater, television, film, music, whatever? Uh, what were the people or things that had the most impact on the performer that you became?
Um, well, I mean, it's such a huge question. It's a great one, but I think that, from a really early age, my family and I, we used to gather in the in the living room and, in our black and white TV, and we used to watch a lot of Laurel and Hardy. Like there was the Laurel and Hardy hour on Saturday afternoons, in the 70s. And this was just something that I treasured. And there was a lot of, Bugs Bunny Roadrunner hour that we'd all gather for as well. So I think that kind of appreciation for really amazing, vaudevillian clown and cartoon, and that whole cartoon genre really sparked something quite deep in me. I often reference these two worlds to my students because a lot of them, they're not as old as I am, and they actually have probably never seen Laurel and Hardy, or they're not familiar with Warner Brothers cartoons. So I'm constantly giving them some of these influences because it's just so rich and it's so perfect and so beautiful. Sesame Street did a great job in bringing clown to television.
Absolutely. And
Oh my gosh,
and Bill
like
Irwin and
Bill
who
Irwin.
was Mr. Pickles' cousin,
God.
Mr. Pickles? What was his name? He died
Oh,
just a couple of
yeah.
years ago.
Yes, yes, he did.
I'm
Oh,
blanking on him, but he was another
yeah.
excellent clown. Um,
So beautiful.
um,
Yeah.
so on this same note, what is some media, again, film, performers, theater, whatever, music, that you feel more clowns should be aware of and pay attention to? What do you feel is underrated and doesn't get the attention it should deserves from clowns who are learning and growing?
Well, I'm always going to everything I can in terms of like physical theater or in, puppetry. Like I see a lot of puppet shows, and mime is rare, but if there is a mime show, I'm going to be there. And mask shows. And I wish there were more people doing masks because there's great mask makers in North America, as you know, like Canada is really blessed with the amount of mask makers that we have, but I don't see a lot of students wearing them and doing it. So, I'm always trying to encourage my students to really see as much aside from clown, as much puppetry, mime, and mask, Buffon as they possibly can. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. A couple more questions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what is a role or project that you've always wanted to do, but due to logistics or budgets or other constraints, haven't been able to pursue?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest thrills I've had um, in the theater world was co-creating a live clown show with my advanced clown students, and that was in 2004. And there were 12 of them working with Neil and I, and it was just magic. So imagine 14 of us all working smoothly with no drama, tons of laughter, and artistic success. So it was just one of these beautiful, beautiful experiences. And my original aim was to do this every 2 years because I have really thirsty advanced students that really ought to be on stage and start creating their work on stage, and they're a little shy. And so I wanted to do this for them and for me because I'm learning as I go, but the logistics just haven't been kind. I haven't given up. I will return to it, but it's a huge undertaking. I mean, I think we rehearsed for about 4 months, and then we presented it at the Toronto Festival of Clowns in 2014, and it was just a gorgeous experience. I'm really looking forward to doing it again.
That's lovely. So on that note, what are you doing now, and where can people find your work?
Yeah. So right now I'm working on a documentary film about the recruiting and training of our newest therapeutic clown artists. So look out for that. That should be coming out by Christmas, if all goes well. And we want it to be available on YouTube. So definitely I'll let you know about that. And the other thing that's taking up a lot of my time, which is wonderful and and huge, is my I'm working on building a therapeutic clowns here in Toronto. So it'll be the first in North America of its kind, because it's going to be affiliated. It's a full affiliation between my hospital and a college in their continuing ed program, and it is going to be and two student placement sites, one for pediatrics, which is our hospital, and one for geriatrics, which will be through another space, a veterans wing in a hospital.
Deeply envious that's taking place in Canada, and won't be something that I'd be able to take part in, because it sounds amazing. What's the timeline looking at on that?
Yeah, so the aim is to start it in the fall of 2018, and it'll go from September to June. And upon certification, I'm also working behind the scenes to create job opportunities for these newly appointed therapeutic clown practitioners. And I'm so excited. And I'm also being the content of the school is I'm receiving mentorship from France, Scotland, Brazil, and Quebec in terms of getting input on my curriculum, and I'm so nerding out on this project. It's really fun.
That sounds amazing. Okay, well, Helen, one last question before we let you go, and thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you.
If you could tag 3 other clowns to be on this podcast after you, who would they be?
Woo. Sonia Norris, John Beale, and Mike Kennard.
Okay. All right, I'll have to look them up online because I don't know them. I saw one of them mentioned on your About page, but I don't know them off the top of my head. But
yeah.
But Helen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
I'll talk to you again.
You should come to Toronto sometime.
If I ever come to Toronto, I will definitely.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you for joining us today on Ridiculous Life of a Clown. This program, as always, is made possible by your support through our Patreon, which you can find through www.picklewater.com. Also, please join us this coming January 27th, 2018 at 7 p.m. at Stageworks Theater in San Francisco for a huge circus gala featuring clowns, comedians, and burlesque dancers, all in benefit of Planned Parenthood. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.